Hello. Welcome to Mission Workshop. Thanks for coming here tonight, guys. This is our fourth founders event that we've done. The idea of this whole project is to pull the curtain back and kind of shine a light on the founders of the brands that we love and appreciate, and learn a little bit more about what it took to get there. So the struggles, the strifes, the road bumps, the things that happened, the things that didn't happen, all the drama, everything in between. So it's a unique event. We'll have some people from the crowd tonight. Hopefully, if you have some questions, please raise your hand and let us know. We'll have some questions via the internet, so those are always good, right? So today, we're happy to say that we have Mike Sinyard from Specialized, founder of Specialized, and quite a few of the staff members from Specialized kind of helping out, supporting cast, kind of talking about some of the other kind of nitty-gritty fun stuff. So I'd like to introduce first tonight Brant Bainbridge. He is the Director of Sustainable Corporate Responsibility. It's a great title. So I'm going to bring Brant up. He's going to kind of speak to the history of the brand and give it a little intro for Mike, and we'll go from there. So thanks again for being here, and we'll get this started now.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for having Specialized. So before we bring Mike up, I just want to lay out a little bit of background, at least on how I came to know Mike and what it is that I think Mike brings to the bike industry that's unique, and what Specialized brings in turn. So back in the late 70s, I managed a very small, high-end bike shop. It was strictly custom stuff, no commercial stuff, all bikes like you see here. This is a Jim Murs touring bike, and we specialized in touring then, and we were one of the first 3 bike shops in the world that did mountain bikes only. And consequently, if you're doing touring bikes in the old days, this is pre-Gruppos, you really have to know your stuff. It's all mix and match. You're building custom wheels, spoke counts 24 to 48. It's a fairly complex thing. It's not like today's plug-and-play world, and you very quickly begin to understand which brands and distributors get it and which ones don't, which ones are sort of marketing fluff. And the first thing I saw from Mike was this turbo tire, and at the time we're all riding tubulars, and some people loved them. I hated them. They were sticky, nasty. You had to put a bunch of cement on there. You had to get them lined up just right. They were expensive. If they punctured, you had to unsew them, patch the tube, sew them back up. They were a giant pain in the ass. And so any alternative to that was really, people were aching for it. And Mike comes out with this high-performance clincher, really the first one we'd seen, and it's folding. And we got this thing, and I thought, God, finally something that is reasonably lightweight enough and close enough to performance. And the insight was in the folding piece for me, because if you're really going to crack the code with performance riders, you got to be able to carry a spare under your seat. And that was my first sort of clue that there's something about these guys. They get it from the standpoint of a rider. And then the next thing that happened was this unleashing of components. And you'll see some of them around here, but in the early 80s, I guess I'll back up and set the stage. The bike industry was very slow-moving then and almost stagnant. So the Campy Novel Record Group came out in '68, and it really wasn't entirely changed until '83. So you have this vast period of time where not much is going on. And the touring market happens. A lot of the stuff didn't work well for the touring market. The mountain bike market happened. We didn't have the stuff we needed, and we're all cobbling stuff in our basements. And suddenly, Mike unleashes this flurry of components. Beautiful headsets in every size possible, except they're sealed and they're affordable. The first affordable sealed bearing hubs in every drilling you can imagine. A beautiful cold forged crankset in both a road and a touring configuration. And the thing that he did that the Japanese didn't get, the Japanese are making some beautiful stuff, but they always miss something. They missed the aesthetic, they missed a critical component. For example, the Specialized cranks were the first ones that had a really nice tight queue. And you didn't feel like a duck when you were riding. I remember Tom Ritchie calling me up and going, "Do you get this? Do you understand how good these things are?" And so I kept looking and thinking, how are these guys doing this? Because you don't know, who's behind the scene. And eventually, I decided that I got to come work at this place because there's something going on there, and these guys actually get real stuff. And when I got down there, what I understood immediately is that Mike's a rider. And that you can take all the marketing fluff and inflation, and there's certainly plenty of that, but when you pare it away, the stuff works because Mike rides it. And so the first thing I learned working on bikes is the first thing you got to do is you got to make a bike in Mike's size. And he's going to ride it, and not just a little bit, he's going to ride it a lot. And if you come down to Morgan Hill, we've got a museum, and there's a whole wall of bikes that are made in Mike's size. And this continues to today. So when the Turbo e-bike came out, I remember I was there, it was cold and rainy and crappy, and it was about 8 o'clock at night. We were having some big meetings. And I looked over in the corner, and here's Mike. He's putting on his jacket and his helmet, and he's strapping up, and he's riding this thing home. In the rain, in the dark, in the cold, and that hasn't changed. I think he's the only CEO that rides 2 Interbike from Morgan Hill, so 700 miles. And I think that piece, plus I think the piece that Jim helped bring to us, so this is a MERS touring bike, and I'd encourage you to look at it and consider that this represents something that was made in the 70s. When Jim made his bikes, I think he was easily the best touring bike builder in the world at that time. And what set him apart is we didn't have good racks then. So I used to wire up turnbuckles on these crappy racks to try to stiffen them up. And if you look here, what you see is custom chromoly tubular racks that are essentially integrated into the frame. If you grab one of these things and wiggle it, it's not going anywhere. And Jim built his own racks, his own bags, he built his own hubs, he built his own headsets, and when we didn't have gears, he made this thing called the MERS Triplizer, which lets you turn a campy crank into a triple. And I think the hallmark of Jim's work was that it was pared down to the essence. It was form follows function, no bullshit. And so that ethos, I think, so the three of us were the sort of original group of early product guys there, and it was unspoken, but that was really the ethos that we had. It had to be for riders, it had to be boiled down to the essence, and it couldn't have any bullshit. And I think today that's really what informs it. And what you've got here, I guess, is a final statement is, this is the vehicle that the company was founded on. This is a bike that Mike rode across Europe when he started the company and visited Chinelli to cut his first deal to get components. And then this very bike was used with a trailer, which we still have, to haul components around the Bay Area. So initially, every sale was delivered on this particular bicycle. And I think that seed that was planted here is really the thing that is carried through and sets Specialized apart. Is it's still about riders. So with that, we'll bring up Mike for a few questions here.
Well, BB, that sounds so good. We should just stop right there. I've got one here.
Oh, you do? Okay.
We got 2. Great. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you. So, any particular, should I just start going?
Yeah, I can start off with a few questions, unless someone has something that they want to ask from the crowd right away. Never done it like that before. Anybody? All right, we'll warm up first. So this first question kind of speaks a little bit to your business. So not to discredit your massive accomplishments, but your specific history of innovation is more entrepreneurial than engineering. You aligned with the right people and you built the best teams to get the job done. Simply put, do you ever wish you were more of a frame builder or a tinkerer, or are you?
Well, I always admire people that can really make things. And am I supposed to stand up here? So my dad was a machinist, and he would make things. And so I'd have ideas as a kid, and I'd hand him tools, and he'd make things. And I always admire people that can really make great things. I can't make great things, but I know what great things are. And I would say very lucky to work with the best of the best. And Jim MERS, in the very beginning, you can see the kind of work that he did in his own bikes. And then really that was really the foundation of the brand. And also when BB came in as well. So, we didn't have a brand book saying what was what. We just knew, just like the store here. So, and it's fun. We always would make things that we go, hey, that's the kind of bike that we would like, and something that really stands up to the abuse. So when I first, before Jim started working at Specialized, he had his shop up in Portland, was building great things, and he goes, yeah, I'm riding my bike down to Panama. I go, what? Going down to Panama. So I would send Jim tires along the way, and he would tell me how they worked. But those kind of way of working in the story is some of the foundation of the brand.
Cool.
So it's a fun journey. You know, I mean, bicycles are so transformative, right? Bicycles are really such a great thing, and I feel so blessed to, you know, work in bicycles and really helping people change their lives. My wife, who's sitting right back here, Linda, we have 3 kids, and our oldest daughter is now over at World Bicycle Relief, you know, doing volunteer work and for 8 months. Unbelievable to do those kind of things, right? And that's what the bicycle does. That's what the bicycle, you all know, right? That's what it brings, the great things. Or, you know, kids or adults who have ADHD. When you go riding, I have ADHD, bad. But when you go riding, it just clears your head.
Would you actually speak a little bit about that foundation that you guys are started?
Yeah, so the foundation of the ADHD, so when I was a kid, they didn't call it ADHD, they just called you bad. I couldn't focus at all. I did terrible in school, I dropped out of high school. And later I started riding because I didn't have a car, but it did make me feel really great, but I just enjoyed it. And it was interesting, years later, my son Anthony ended up going through a very similar kind of experience. And we started riding together, and it really helped his focus. And I thought, wow. And then I saw this article by this doctor it was Harvard Medical, who had studied these kids, and this kid said, riding is my Ritalin. And I read that, and I go, that's us. Probably most of the pro riders out there have ADHD. Most people, but you know, if you have energy, you probably have ADHD. But so through the, right, especially when you sit in front of a computer, but really through that, and I saw the transformation of our son and how great that was for him, really struggling through school. And then he became really addicted to riding. And then through that, he just transformed himself. You know, he traveled around Asia. He's completely fluent in Chinese, you know, writing and speaking. He speaks Japanese. You know, he speaks Spanish, you know, and I'm just so proud of him. He now lives in Japan. So we think a lot of that, I know a lot of that is from writing. So from this, I said, you know, we have to help more people with this. People just need to know. So we started a foundation and mainly focused on kids, getting kids out riding. You know, we started years ago with NICA, being the founding member of that. Getting kids out riding mountain bikes is great. And now we're working in a lot of the schools to get cycling as part of the curriculum. And I'm really proud of that it's making a difference, and you just see these parents come back and go, wow, this kid is so focused now. There's a piece on next Sunday on the Today Show about that, they filmed. So we started a foundation. It's going to be a long journey. We'll have some fun with it. Yeah, we were thinking to hire Michael Moore to go interview some of the drug companies and say, what do you think of this writing as you're Ritalin? You know? So my personal belief is that we will look back years from now and think, what were we doing over medicating our children? So that's what the foundation is just to get kids out riding.
Since we're on that topic, where is your favorite place to ride?
You know, I'm not that picky. I like to ride everywhere. I like to ride around in the city. I do like that. I like riding around in the city, out in the country. Also love, I love this kind of thing, you know, going out on the long rides. I've done a lot of that. I don't do as much of it now, the touring, just being busy, but that is a transformative thing, to sell everything you own and just go out on your bike. It is. It's such a feeling of freedom, right? To do that, to just go, right? That's one of the best. But I like all kinds of riding. I love mountain bike riding too. There's nothing like being out on the mountain bike and just hearing the dirt and rocks under your tires, and that's it.
So you mentioned touring there. There's a touring story here where you went over to Europe. I don't know the age exactly, but do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that and your kind of finding of or meeting with the Cinelli family when you were over there?
Sure. So after college, you know, with a few friends, we had a real strategic plan, right? Let's sell all our shit. This was the bike I rode, and go ride around Europe for 3 months. And it was an amazing thing to do. It was an amazing thing to do. And I discovered such a great reception in Europe, particularly the Southern Europe, to the bicycle. And people, you know, I didn't have any problems with people buzzing you, and it was great. So I traveled around for 3 months, slept outside, and just had a great time. And once in a while went to the youth hostel. And so I thought, hey, when I'm over there, might as well stop in and see if I can talk to some of these, the greatest, right? Like Cinelli and some of the other Italians who really made great stuff. So that's what I did. And at the youth hostel, I met this woman there who was Swiss, and so she could, of course, she spoke 4 languages perfectly. And we went over and talked to Chino Cinelli, and he said, sure, I'll sell you our products. And so that was the start. That was the very start. And then I thought, well, what do? I don't have any money. I had a little money, and I bought a little bit of stuff. And then I went to a number of bike shops, and I said, hey, if you'll pay in advance, I can get these parts. And a lot of people, you know, had long hair. I had hair then, and a beard. But a few people believed me. And Jim was actually one of the people that believed me when, because Jim paid in advance for some special rims I got from France. So that's how it started.
Are there any questions from the audience yet? Not yet? Not there yet? Oh, there we go. Here, let me give you the mic first before you chime in.
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to ask about the Revolve story.
Yes.
Just, what's the story?
It's an interesting story. So there's this, so the Revolve story, there's this really great engineer in France who was an engineer of bridges, very famous guy. And in the 70s, he was making very exotic wheels, not as light as they are today, but there was nothing like it. And so later, when we're going to develop wheels, I talked to him, and I said, hey, we want to resurrect your brand. And this guy, he was about like 85 years old, and there was this big chalkboard, and he put all these equations on there and everything, and he was great. So he inspired us to make the first wheels, and that's why we use the Roval name.
So since we're on that topic, just about every one of your Specialized peers has been acquired or builds their brand on acquisitions. Trek with Fisher and Lamond, Cannondale the Cannondale Group with GT Schwinn as some pretty easy examples. Other than Roval,
Yeah.
which was brought up just now, was there a reason why that was not the way you wanted to go?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, we never had the money to do that. And the second thing is, I was really, blessed to have great people that we could create what we wanted in the way we wanted, with Jim Mers at the brand, like BB was talking about, the headsets and the crank and all that. Jim did all of that. He did all of that. He created all that. And it was better than, at the time it was better than anything else. And BB came and did a lot of great things, and that's really the way the brand is today. We find people that are really passionate, like Eric Nolan, passionate about the outdoor adventure riding with the AWOL and the whole experience. And that's the way the brand was then, and that's the way the brand is now.
Since we're on that, let's go back to the beginning and speak about the origins of the name and the logo. Yeah.
Okay, the name, in some ways it really wasn't that thoughtful. And it really wasn't. I had this roommate, we're riding along in the car. I remember when I started the company, and I told Chino, I said, hey, I know a lot of the top riders in the US. And he goes, oh, that's good. Okay, well, I'll sell to you. And I did know some of the top riders in the US. So I thought the name, well, I better not call it Mike's Bikes or Mike's Parts. It doesn't sound very international, right? Doesn't sound that good. So I thought, well, in Italy, if somebody's like a frame builder like Mers would be an artigiano, an artist, right? And if you're really into something, you're a specialist, right? So I thought, okay, specialized. And so that's how I came up with the name Specialized. And then, even now, you say, yeah, I work at Specialized. Specialized what? Right? Yeah, so the logo, the one now with the S, there was, so it's actually calligraphy. There's a Japanese woman that was doing really nice calligraphy. I love the calligraphy, but it's like, if you look at it, it's kind of like ragged, like it's just a paintbrush, like that. Well, we had this in the beginning. You see that S? And I used to say, that looks like a Maytag S or something like that. Looks like a bad alphabet. So that's where the S came from.
Do we have any questions from the crowd?
What was the transition to complete bicycles like? Was that a huge challenge?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because really in the beginning it was just the parts. And I love the parts. And most people never really pay attention to the parts. And so I was fanatic about all the parts. In fact, even the tubing and, all of that. In fact, a lot of the frame builders would buy those parts from us. Jim was one of the early customers. Tom Ritchie was a customer. So, and then later we said, hey, well, we want to make a bike, hand-built bike, more available in the same way that a custom bike would be. Because it was like really nice hand-built bikes like this, and then there was like super generic stuff. And I thought, well, we should make custom bikes more available with each size having different tubing, different tubing, types of tubing and different butting. So that was the idea, and it started with frames initially. And, and as that developed, Jim was the one doing the design on the frames, and BB had a lot of ideas as well. So you can see, well, there's one of the first ones. I saw one of the early allays down in the workshop there, probably in 1980 something. I think one of the things that we're proud of is the bikes that we made then, and also hopefully now, is, if you look at it, you go, hey, we're still proud of that machine, and it'll still hold up forever, right? So that's key.
So we've had you've mentioned a couple times, Jim, and we've talked about a little bit about going into complete bikes. So here's a question from Twitter here. It's from Alan Schinkel. Could you talk about the collaboration with MERS on the stump jumper? Huge historical interest in the development of it.
Yeah, well, I think, so Specialized wasn't the first to make the mountain bikes. A lot of other great people, Richie and Steve Potts and Fisher, and even before that, some of the very first mountain bikes were in France in the late 50s. But I think what Jim really brought to it was always that simple, real practical, useful function of the bike. And if you think about like this bike here, you could jump out of a friggin' airplane with that thing and go ride it wherever, because it's really solid. Well, the mountain bike needed exactly the same thing, right? The range of gearing. And so when Jim started off, the bikes were really heavy. Like our first bike, this was a pretty heavy bike. But then if you look at the pink bike over there, really transformed. It had, quick release, hollow axle, all of those things. So still very lightweight, but zero sacrifice on durability. So that was the thing that Jim really brought to it. And I remember a lot of times people would be debating about all the different geometries. It should be this, it should be that. And Jim always hated meetings, so he'd just leave the meeting and go make different frames and paint them different colors. And we go, okay, good, we're gonna ride this. Which geometry is this one? I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. Just don't talk about that, just ride it. And that's how we decided. And that's really powerful. And so we still have that way today. A lot of people just make stuff on a computer, and I go, well, how do you know that's going to work? Oh, because we've done it before, and it's this and that. No, you got to ride it. So that's a really key element, is actually fabricating and riding.
Do we have any other questions from the crowd there? Let me give you the mic first real quick.
I'm curious how your progression from an elite or like an enthusiast bike like you show over there to broad lines from entry-level bikes to high-end bikes has really taken shape. And maybe in that context, if you could add your involvement with Merida and how you differ from, say, Fisher or Ritchie or Bontrager.
Yeah. Well, I think, so how things developed, probably I would say things have developed in the company by experts that come to the brand. So in the very beginning, I was talking about Jim and the development of the mountain bike and making bikes lighter, touring bikes, and then racing bikes. So that's how the thing developed. And one of the founding things in the very early days was tires. I love tires. You know, tires make the biggest difference on your bike than anything. So that was always the thread through everything, is the tires. So really it just kind of developed over time, those areas of experts. Just like with Eric Nolan and now Kevin really leading the adventure area, you know, with the AWOL, getting into that. Actually, in some ways, it's doing it better than we did before, but it's really bringing that back, which we started with. It's kind of a version of this that's like really good, right? Sometimes you look at the old bikes, you go, boy, that's really good. And then you ride it and you go, yeah, but not as good as the newer bikes, right? And then I think the other question you said with engagement with Merida. Yeah, so years ago they made a minority investment in the company, which really helped us to fund the company, because I started off with no money. And actually there's a real advantage of that. I call it the economies of tiny. And the economies of tiny, and my son has his own business, and he's experiencing that as well. And it's really powerful. So yeah, we had an investment 15 years or so with a minority investment, and that's really helped us to really be strong financially.
We have another question from the crowd here. From the face
I got a question for you, Mike.
I know that
there.
guy.
Introduce yourself, sir.
Yep, I'm Ned Overend. So I've been with Specialized a few years, maybe 28 now. I think. But what interests me, I've seen a lot of change in growth in the company and the competitiveness of the business. And Specialized has survived and thrived, grown, right? It's a big company now. And it wasn't always that way, and it's a very competitive business. I think in the early days of mountain bike, there was a lot of companies coming in, and there was a lot of growth, so it was probably easier. And then when the market, I think, tapered off a little bit, that it was tough on a lot of companies. So my question is, what realizations in business did you have in a business model that helps you be successful to the point where you've been able to survive and grow this big?
Sometimes I wonder every day. My wife wonders too. I tell her these problems. But, you know, I would say it's, thanks for asking that, Ned. You know, it's really simple. It is so simple. So in the very beginning, remember I told I started the company, and Mers joined the company, and then BB. It's always about the people. Always. It's only that. When you have great people, it's fun, and you always figure it out. And really that's what it is having people that share the same vision and the passion. Doesn't mean you always agree, but it means you're always focused on the same thing, and you'll get there together. And speaking of that, I remember, is that how many years it is, Ned? 28? I remember when Ned first started racing, people said, boy, there's this guy Ned Overend, he's really strong on the bike. And I remember I went out to see Ned in Durango. I think we're sitting on the back of the loading dock. And I said, Ned, we'd like you to ride for us. And Ned goes, will you make the stuff really good? I said, sure. And more often than not, we did. But even when we made some things that were really bad, Ned still won. I remember that headlock helmet. It was so huge. Remember that, Ned? And Ned is an example of, connecting with the best. So Ned's not just a rider. Ned is a superstar. He knows about product. He knows what great is. He knows how to work with people. How to tell it straight when it's not good and make it happen. How to be a great ambassador for the sport. So it's the same thing. It always comes back to connecting with the best people.
So speaking of that, I wanted to kind of talk about and get your take on I called it the community of ultra productive misfits at Specialized right now, and how it's possible that a company like Specialized, as big as you are, can foster these kind of outward thinker personalities. So I speak, I'm thinking about Eric. I'm thinking about guys like that.
You're referring to Eric when
I'm
you talk about
I'm
the
looking
misfit?
right at him. It seems like there's a team of people there right now that we see they're super active, they ride a lot, but then their output are these the AWOL bikes, the fat bikes, these kind of other types of vehicles, almost similar to the touring bikes back in the day in a way. So just wanted to see what are those people that you seek out, or do they come to Specialized as a place that they can thrive?
Well, I would say it's both. It's kind of serendipity, right? Just connecting up. And like I said in the very beginning, we've been really fortunate to always, meet the very best people. And Eric Nolan was one of those characters. And so we knew Eric was a great designer, living in Scandinavia and doing some amazing things. And so Eric was riding around. I think you were touring around the U.S. with your wife. And he goes, "Hey, I want to stop by and talk to you guys about bike design." Well, first of all, that's great, right? He's out riding his bike. He does great designs, and so I think it just comes together in that way. And but it takes a lot. I mean, we probably talk to 50 people to hire one. So, yeah, and we're really fortunate. And the great people have the great energy and great product.
If I could, I wanted to see if Eric wanted to walk up and say a few things real quick, and then maybe we can have Jim come up as well.
Yeah, so it's funny because everything Mike says here is like, that's me. But it's like 30 years later, and it's just history repeating itself, which is fun. I think we have the same agenda. So I was riding across the US with my wife. We were touring. The whole idea with that was just like recovery from bad times, start a new chapter in life, all that. No particular reason beyond that. But kind of stopping along the West Coast, stop by Specialized, stop by some other brands. I contacted Specialized, say I'm riding my bike, I'm a designer. I'm a rider for the most. And they just like, okay, stop by here. We've been looking for a guy like you for a long time. I came there and they wouldn't let me go. It's like, we need you. I said, okay, I'm not ready for this. I'm out riding my bike. And Mike brought me on this ride and he almost killed me You picked me up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we went out on an 8-hour ride in the Santa Cruz Mountain. You know, I think he knew that I was a decent designer, but he wanted to try me out as a rider. And we went riding, and I almost died up there. But I made it, and I thought that was like the proof of concepts. Like, yeah, this guy, he's all right. He knows bikes. Most people like who are interested in bikes, you know, there's a lot of me, but if you're a hardcore rider, you're welcome here. I think that's the benchmark of like our company today, and when we hire people, there's so many talented young designers out there that know everything about shape and design and function and fashion, but if they're not riders, they don't really know what they're talking about. You gotta be out there and really do your thing. So Specialized wanted me, I said, I'm not ready. I want another 12 weeks. Gotta continue this tour. Went up to Portland, came down to Morgan Hill, and I got hired. So that's pretty much it. That's the story.
And you've never had a car?
I never owned a car, no. You know, there were just some things that connected that were fine, you know, having that as a platform and then growing, it's been a huge and super fun journey. And, you know, it's like being a rider and doing good shit like I know we do. I know that the kids today and riders today are too smart. There's too many good products out there. You can't really fool the kids, you know. There's a lot of knowledge, like this crowd here knows everything about bicycles, but if you're just being true to creating good product and developing good product, I think you got a winner there, and that's what we do today in the adventure category. AWOL, that you see the bikes in the windows here, is not really far away from what this bike is. It's a no bullshit bike, you know, that could take you wherever you want to go, and I'm happily being a good ambassador for that, and going to continue to sort of elevate the game and be better, but not trying to fool anybody into something they're not up to.
That's good. We have a lot of good debates too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Every day.
Yeah?
See if Jim wants to come up and maybe say a few
Yep.
words.
Hello. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say, but the thing that Eric was talking about with the ability to ride, I think as you do long rides, when I did some of the big tours that I went on in the early days before I worked at Specialized, you have lots of time to think about bicycles, because you're just sitting there and you're of course enjoying the world, but sometimes, for me anyway, I'm a technical guy and I look at everything on a bike and I say, oh, this is not right, or I can do this better, or I can make this lighter and still be strong. And so for me, all the designs that I brought to my MERS bikes and then came on to Specialized was through riding. And I think that Mike and I hit it off together right from the early days, and the concept or the philosophy of Specialized came from those early days, and it's still there. I think that really is something that Mike's been able to carry through. And I think the other thing that Specialized does that other companies don't do as well is the ability to sit back and think, well, how would this bicycle be used to actually come up with something that nobody's ever done before. It's still a bicycle; they're all kind of the same. But for instance, Mike came up with the idea for a whole new category. It was the Roubaix, which is more or less a racing bike, but it's more comfortable. If it's something that you can ride for a long time and not be so beat up as a pure racing bike. And Mike was a believer in that. And I think he had to fight within the company to get people to believe in that. But it turned out to be right on the mark. And so, in other words, I think there's a more of a strategic outlook that Specialized has. That there's enough strength financially and there's enough talent that you can look ahead and think about how to do things that nobody else has done before, and it might take 2 or 3 years to do. And most bike companies don't have the long game, I think, that Specialized does. That's the way that's one of the things that I attribute the success of the company to, actually. And there is lots of people inside of Specialized that you've never heard of that are just amazing, absolutely the best in the whole bike world. And they're working on things that are years out. And the other thing that Specialized does that is first class in the whole world is testing. It's the only bike company in the world that has its own wind tunnel, which is I'm pretty sure is the best bicycle wind tunnel in the world, and it's right in Morgan Hill. That's true of also the product testing. The lab, the test lab, which I had a hand in making, it's just something really to be proud of, and it's something that you, as a customer, you don't know anything about it, but when you buy a Specialized bike, you're not the tester. The testing has already been done, and that's something that I think Specialized really brought to the bike world. It was not done that way before Specialized was on the scene.
Speaking of testing, Jim, tell us about your long rides. What's the longest?
Well, I did ride from Portland to Panama and then on. It was actually going to be around the world ride, but 6 months rode from Portland to Panama in 5 months, which is it's really, this was 1971 and 2, so
Before you're born.
really not a lot of people doing that kind of thing, and I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot about how to make bikes work, and the equipment I used was not my own. So when I came back, I decided that I knew how to make bike frames better than what was available, and went ahead and did it. So I think those kind of long rides are a way to experience the world that's unlike any. You could say, well, maybe walking would be similar, but that's a little bit too slow. I think bicycle touring is the right pace, and it forces you to experience everything that's along the way, no matter whether it's something you want to be in or not. You have to deal with it.
I remember you were in Portland and you'd say, hey, I'm going to be coming down that way. I go, oh yeah? You go, yeah, I'll be riding down.
Yeah, I used to take a month off every year. That's one of the things that I did. Even though I wasn't making any money, I made sure that I had a month of good weather and rode mostly in the western U.S., rode almost all the roads in Oregon, and a lot of them in California, Idaho, Nevada, Montana, Arizona. So I wasn't just a touring rider. I rode when I was building bikes, I didn't have a car, so I rode every day that's my transportation. So it was really kind of a lifestyle choice, and it really set the wheels in motion to become my career. And I think Mike, I knew Mike when he first started. He would take the train to Portland and ride his bike with a trailer and go to the bike shop. And I was one of his first customers, so
Yeah.
he stayed at my house, And
I didn't want to buy a hotel. Getting a hotel too expensive.
anyway, so we always talked on the phone because I needed parts, and I kept bugging him to hire me, and it took a long time, but finally, the very first day that I was on the job, I left from Portland, got a suit and left from Portland and went to Japan, straight to Japan. I didn't even go to San Jose. And we hit the how many meetings per day?
Oh yeah, 8.
And we designed all these things pretty much with the Japanese engineers, and I didn't really do much in the way of drawings. It was just working with the suppliers, and it was intense. The growth rate was it was pretty hardcore growth rate.
Yeah.
Not necessarily fun, but
Yeah.
but anyway, it was the basis for the company now was started back in the early days, and it's still. I think the philosophy has to do with supplying the best bicycle equipment in a reasonable price point. I think that's what we're trying to do, and I think it's still true. Any questions?
So Jim, isn't your son taking the crazy idea you had?
Well, let's not encourage him.
He's riding to Brazil.
Yeah, my younger son wants to ride to Brazil next month. And I'm not real thrilled with that.
And you're telling him it's dangerous.
Well, thanks, Jim, for your time up there. I appreciate it. Does anybody from the crowd have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So, you talk about passion. It all started about the passion of the bike and stuff like that. But I also, specialize as this, amazing marketing company. The way that you guys present yourselves through sponsored athletes, through your image, whether it's ad campaigns and commercials, like the new turbo bike, you just came out with a whole new commercial and everything around
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
When did that really start in the company? When the company started just about the product and the passion for the bike, when did you really start to shift that whole kind of mindset to the more marketing side? Because you guys have definitely been the leaders in that, I feel.
Well, thanks for saying that. I don't know that we are, but I don't know. In my view, I look at the communication, or that piece of it is also important, that it's good. And if you look at some of even in the early 70s or 80s, and some of the pieces here, you can see, I think they were good, and you got it, I mean, you got the emotion of what it was, and technically. So we've always tried to do that. We've always tried to. I think cycling is about inspiring, right? So that's something we've always tried to do. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't.
Can I add a piece here, Mike, just from the outside? So I maybe have a little different point of view about this than Mike, because I think he's being modest here, but I think the one thing Specialized did, as well as the innovation in product, was the innovation in marketing. And we didn't look at the bike business, and that's one of the first things I remember from you. If you go back, there's some old catalogs here, and you can see the transition. We go 78, 81, 82, and you get to the 84 one. And that 84 catalog changed the business. And it changed the business because we didn't reference the bike business. And I remember Mike coming into my office, for example, on a product side, and throwing down the first Nike Visier shoe. And he goes, look, they've exposed the technology, figure it out, right? And that was it. And I think the references were brands like Nike. And we used Shy a Day. We went and used some of the same ad agencies that these guys used, when I'm sure we couldn't come close to affording it, right?
Yeah. Well, again, it was great people, right? It's like in the very beginning, BB joining, Rich Silverstein of Goodby Silverstein and Partners here in the city, Bike Fanatic. So we've had so many great things happen to us because people love bikes, right? But that's true. If you do something, you know, if you say, hey, you work with bikes, then people go, everybody loves bikes. But we've always tried to do that well, and sometimes we have, and sometimes we've been really off.
So I have a question here, you know, we've kind of talked about the past, the present, the bikes. We've gone into marketing now. So let's go into some of the other side of things, the PR side of things. So the Cafe Roubaix situation,
Yes.
a few years ago was not great for the image of Specialized. It seems like it's water that is well under the bridge regarding that whole thing and the owner there. But I thought I'd ask if there's anything you'd like to make clear about what happened there.
Well, that was a big mistake. I take responsibility for it. I was embarrassed by it. What happened? It was at a time that we had so many different proliferations of trademark issues and counterfeit product issues. So we have this in-house attorney, and we were just like, man, we were just attacking all these things, and most of it was right. That one wasn't, and when I saw it, I closed it down. I went over and apologized to Dan about it, and I think it was a good message, a good learning from that. So yeah, and I think the intellectual property thing is such a big deal, right? And we closed down. So just to own that was totally a mistake, and totally a great learning. Now we're very thoughtful about what we do, and even now we have kind of grown that group that looks at all the counterfeits. We have it's you know what the biggest trade is a people trade, and then drugs, and the counterfeits are right there because the people don't get in trouble. And the first time we recognized there were so many counterfeits, somebody had put a lawsuit to us for this tarmac. The guy said, I was going down the hill and the fork broke off. I heard it on the weekend. It's like, how could that happen? How could that be? Get the bike back. We got the bike back. The engineers are looking at it. And they go, it's not our bike. It's a counterfeit. So we started really getting probably too aggressive, but we were really aggressive on that. And we have a group in China as well working on it. But it's one thing if it's a luxury bag. It's another thing if it's a bike that you could go down a hill at 50 miles an hour. Our brand or helmet. So yeah, but just owning that as something that was a great learning.
Another question from the crowd here.
Hi, Mike. So I think I understand this correctly. You're in the office a lot, like every day. Is that true? And you know, you're now the head of a top 3 bike company in the world, and yet you're going into the office every day. What is that drives you? I mean, with that many people working for you and as big of a machine as you built, you're still in the office on a regular basis. I guess, you know.
Yeah, because my wife Linda says, I don't want you at working at home.
So you're not buying an island and going somewhere with your wife?
No, in all seriousness, you know, part of that's true. But I would say, you know, the thinking is the same as in the beginning. We want to make better products, and we want to do better, and good enough isn't just good enough. So Yeah, I would say I'm more driven than ever before. And as all of you know, the way you're connected now, and there's people in different parts of the world, sometimes it's hard to shut it off, right? Right? It is. That's why it's good to go on a ride where there's no reception.
I was going to go into this.
But yeah, I do go in every day, and I like to help the team. Probably a lot of times I'm probably a hindrance because I drill down too deep into things. But yeah, I love what I do. I love what bikes do for people in the world.
We have some questions from the crowd here. Let me pass this down to you first before you shout that out.
Hey Mike, how's it going? I was just curious to see what your thoughts were for the future of cycling in the next, say, 5 or 10 years. Like, what do you find? Clearly, the adventure cycling is really important, but what do you think is going to happen that you find it more exciting in the future of bicycles?
I think the future of bicycles, I think people are rediscovering the bike again, big time, right, around the world. I was talking about World Bicycle Relief. Look what that is doing for people. I think, like here in the city, the more congested, you're going to have more and more people going by bikes, right? And the bike is more and more capable. And besides, when you get there, you feel better than if you were in the car. And so I think the place that the bicycle has is going to grow. And then there's also electric assist on bikes that is going to make it for more people to come in to cycling. And although I like really high-end bikes, I think all of us, and as Eric was talking about, we love bikes that just let everybody in, right? So I think there's more bikes like that. So I think the future, I think bikes will continue to evolve and get better. But also to attract more people in. People need a way to feel great, right? You need a way to feel great, and cycling is the magic.
So that kind of goes into a question we had from Twitter. You touched on it just here, but we can maybe expand on it. The question is from Steve Dioro, or Diorio. Are e-bikes good for cycling in general and mountain biking in particular?
So my view is yes. I think bikes that get people out riding are good. And the more we can get people riding, and if these were all bikes out there instead of cars, so that's good. I think, just like when mountain bikes first started, it created a huge concern, with the safety on the trail. I think people just have to be responsible. So I think the answer is absolutely. I mean, I think the future of the cars is going to be electric, and I think the future of a lot of bikes is electric.
Great. We have another question from the crowd here. We'll pass this down real quick, if you don't mind.
Hello. Yes. We've been talking a lot today about like adventure bikes, mountain bikes, and road bikes. But I know that Specialized makes a lot of other variety of bikes like BMX and freestyle. Where do you guys gain your influence or from these for bikes like that? For like BMX or for freestyle or for like, for instance, trials, like other bikes outside of just the mountain bikes and the road bikes you guys make. Where do you guys get your inspiration from? Or from the designer standpoint, because like a lot of the times the designers are more on the level of probably within the age bracket of probably doing mountain biking and road biking, but generally the younger demographic of riders are doing freestyling or BMX. So I was just wanting to see where you guys got your inspiration for that, for those kind of designs.
Well, yeah, I mean, we love those categories, and we were deep involved in that in the past with TJ Lavin, and it's an interesting. I mean, that area is really good. I love it. Most of that area has migrated a little bit more to the mass market, right? And so it tends to be an area that some of the more special brands, specialty brands, don't play in as much anymore. But I mean, the activity and the riders are amazing.
Another question from the crowd here, front row.
Hey, Mike. Just going back to the future, curious to know about the future of retail. You know, as that landscape changes rapidly across all industry, specifically in cycling, the number of IBDs has decreased. I mean, do you see, and as shops align themselves with brands, Specialized, Trek, Giant, et cetera, I mean, do you see Specialized going consumer direct or selling bicycles online in the near future?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the importance of a really good retailer is huge. Because the bicycle's not like a shoe or something that you can just sell it. So the amount of the service and all that goes with it is huge. I think there's a tremendous position for the great retailers that really make the difference. And so, and we really support those retailers to continue to grow, and because the retailers are not just selling stuff, the good ones, right? They're creating the community, they're providing a lot, right? Just like this great store here. So I see it continuing to be strong. And most of the time with bike shops, because it's a passion-driven sport, there ends up to be too many bike shops. So there's always coming and going of stores, but the good ones really stay on.
So we'll jump back on Twitter here. We have a question from Johnny Sprockets, which is a retailer of yours in Chicago. Manuel, the owner there, wants to know if there's a succession plan in place for when, if ever, you want to take a step back.
Hola, Manuel. I'm calling on you to come out. Manuel's a great guy. He's from Colombia. Well, as far as the team, yeah, I think there's a lot of great people that are growing up in the brand. Many of the people here, and a lot of other people to go on and keep the brand going. And that's really what's important, is to create a brand that can go on forever, and not a brand that you create to flip. So there's quite a few great people to carry on. And actually, they would probably say, Mike, we could do actually better if you would just let us go. And many times that's true.
Well, in that same vein, is there a major threat to Specialized right now? Whether it's a region, technology, internal, what's your biggest threat right now, you think?
Well, I would say the three biggest threats are ABC: arrogance, bureaucracy, and complacency. Those are the three friggin' things that'll kill you. And sometimes we display those things, right? We do, and we don't want to, but we do. So I think it's always to keep driving and doing better, and to make sure that we really have a culture that people can challenge, things and make things better. Because the most common thing that will predict demise is success. So if you're successful, then you think you got it figured out, and as soon as you think you got it figured out, you're finished. So I think really it's to keep driving, keep driving and making things better.
We have a question here from the cameraman.
Hey, Mike, thanks for coming out. Hey, I just had a question about like trail advocacy and what you guys are doing to support single track growth in the United States, and just help expand the networks that we have, and I don't know, support legalization and
Legalization?
yeah, because it seems to be banned just a little far north here. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, we're a huge advocate of trail access, and we're part of the really getting IMBA as the founder in the very beginning. So we put a lot of effort into that and contributing a lot. And it's important. I think now that we see the riders are so responsible, and now there's more riders out there than horses. So in the beginning, it was really tough, right? It was really tough. I'd say it's a lot better now. And I said we continue to invest in that to make it better for more riders.
Great. Here's another one. Are there any past failures or close calls that you would be comfortable speaking about right now?
This last week. There is, I would say, there's a lot of failures all the time. Those of us who work together, we know it's like, and there's a lot of failures all the time. I love the Chinese symbol for crisis. Does anybody know what that looks like? But the Chinese symbol for crisis has two symbols. One is danger, and the other one is opportunity. So it's always like that. But I'd say, as far as mistakes, I'd say we make judgment mistakes. We make product mistakes all the time. We make relationship mistakes. This is probably the biggest one, is making relationship mistakes, because our business is all based on relationship with all the people. So ones that I would like to talk about in this room.
Yeah, let's get
I was just
specific.
talking to my wife about a couple today. I think the ones that get me the most is when we let people down. When we let people down that were counting on us, or a rider's disappointed. I think those things are the worst ones are the ones you kind of knew it was going on, but you didn't take action, and then it's there. Those are the worst. But I mean, we've had those. We had a few years ago, we had an issue with the wrap on the carbon fork on the tarmac. Wasn't good enough, and we had a couple of them break out of, I don't know, how many was that, Sean? Out of 70,000, there was like 2 or 3 that broke. And it was like, so we always look at it as like, well, how many have to break for us to go? It's not good enough. 1 or 2. How many people have to get hurt? None. We don't want anybody hurt. So we just make that decision. But there's a lot of things like that. Product things, because you're trying to make things, really really performing well and things. Although the bicycle, as all of you know, looks simple, is very complicated. So there's a lot of product mistakes like that that we make. I don't know, Sean, you could probably think of some other ones.
We covered the Cafe Roubaix thing. I think we all learned from that. The tarmac was great. I think one thing to highlight on that is that, to your point, Mike, we had one failure and we started immediately a voluntary recall. We said, all right, one's enough. And then it was, I think, 2. And we just, I think that was a great example of learning from previous mistakes, and just on that one, we wanted to get ahead of it.
Yeah, I'll never forget, I remember when Jim and BB were at the company, we were buying the tires from this Japanese manufacturer who was really good, and they sent a note. They go, hey, there's 1,500 tires that we just sent you of those turbo tires, and we think there might have been 5 or 6 that were in the defective batch that got in there, and we don't know where they are. And they go, so just destroy them. Don't use those tires. And I thought, you know what? That is powerful. Because they could have just let us go with those tires. So we put them up on the mezzanine, and so all of us as employees, we just rode the tires. And we used them all, but we never found one that was bad. But the power is that honesty to go, to not let anything get through. And I would say in the early days, you know, Jim, BB, and I, we learned so much from the Japanese. So much about trust. Unbelievable. It's deep. Yeah, it changed my life in working with the Japanese people.
We have another question here that kind of fits in that. So many of Specialized's greatest achievements have come from understanding the customer's desires before anybody else does. What makes you feel like your intuition or your team's intuition keeps Specialized ahead of the pack?
Well, you know, it's interesting. If you were inside, you would know that we're always complaining, or I am complaining about the things that we don't get, that we are missing. But I'd say one of the reasons that the things that we do get is because of people like Eric Nolan that are living it, right? Or Sean or Kevin. They're living that category. And so a lot of times they'll come up with things and they'll go, hey, this is the way it should be. And sometimes I go, no, that's not right. But then you go, they're so deep into it, go. So I would say it's always about the people in the category. If we're successful in a category, it's because we have people that are just deep in it. It's always that way.
Has there been anything you've missed out on that you wish you jumped on sooner?
Oh, yeah, everything, right?
Like what?
Well, like we wanted to make this electric mountain bike 2 years earlier. And the guy said, hey, we're going to be late with the wrong bike, but we're going to be early with the best bike, right? So I think some of the things you go, why does it take so long? But we do miss a lot of things. And sometimes if we're successful in with something, then we miss the other thing. And there's an interesting book, it's called The Innovator's Dilemma. So if you get one thing that's going really good, then you tend to miss, because you're defending instead of searching. But we miss a lot. And I think, and we don't want to jump, I guess that's one of the things I would say that Jim really helped us with since the beginning is if we did something to make sure it's really good, and that even if I'm looking at that bike 30 years later, you go, that's a great bike, even now. And so to not move too fast, to make sure what we do really has a foundation.
Great. I have a question here actually from the internet from Dan Richter, owner of Cafe Roubaix. So he wants to know, today's bicycle industry is very competitive with so many bicycle companies that come and go and many bicycle shops that only last a few years. What would your advice be to a new velo entrepreneur?
Well, so I think the first thing is to do what you love. And I also tell my kids the same thing, which is your life's not for rent, so do what you love to do. And if you do what you love to do, and you do it in the best way, it's going to be fine. And one of the things, I talked about the economies of tiny. And I think especially now with the internet and connections, that you can really operate with a very low overhead. Like my dad always used to say, son, being rich is living well below your means. So that's what being rich is, right? And not having the stuff own you. But I think having a store is just, or any business is like, what is your point of view? Having a great point of view. And Dan, knowing you're really a focused guy who loves bikes. Then say, what is the focus of, what are you going to bring? What is your unique position? And then just drill in on that. So I think it's that, and really keeping the cost down. And then whoever you hire has to be absolutely great, just like my example of talking about the founding team here. So having the really great people that share the same vision, keeping the cost low, but the point of view has to be really good. What are you offering? And Dan, I see that you can do that.
Do you have any questions from the crowd?
You've talked a little, whoa, it's really weird to hear your voice out loud. You've talked a little bit about things that you thought were failures. Are there ever things that you think really hit the mark that just never took off, that you personally believed were really great? If there's anything that sticks out in your mind that you thought should have taken off?
Yeah, quite a few things. And I was off, you know. And yeah, a lot of things I thought were really good, or breakthroughs in a different way. So do you want examples of those, or just?
Well, I actually
yeah, the rock combo was. I thought that was a really great bike. Well, it is a great bike, and it'd be a great bike today. And sometimes the timing isn't right, and sometimes, you know, you've heard the saying that if something's really innovative, there's only one person that believes in it, and it's usually the person that created it. But that doesn't mean it can't be great. Because a lot of times when you put something out there and people go, no way, they go, that is so off. And a lot of times that means we're right on the target, right? Because we can also be pretty conservative too, right? So there's been a lot of those things. Yes.
We actually have a question from Twitter that kind of speaks to this whole thing, from Occupy Single Track. He's wanting to know, are we ever going to see the globe line again? So,
well, you see some of the inspiration of the globe and the design and other things, but as far as the globe brand, we've pulled that back. I love the bikes.
Can you maybe speak to it just real quickly, what the globe line was?
So the globe line was, we had envisioned, and Abibi was part of that a long time ago, when we said, hey, let's really create total utility commuting bikes, right? And that isn't as performance oriented, because Specialized is about performance. In fact, that's our founding principle, is to focus on the rider's needs. to provide a true performance benefit, whatever that rider is. And we said, yeah, it doesn't fit as much in the urban. And then we did the Globe, and I think we made some really solid bikes, but it really wasn't in our wheelhouse. So now when we're creating the more urban bikes under Specialized, we're giving them that Specialized point of view. So yeah, we did pull back on the Globes.
Are there any particular brands that you appreciate and why? And these could be cycling, non-cycling brands.
Yeah. Well, I think Apple does an amazing job, communicates, great, clean design. I think Tesla is an amazing company in everything they're doing, their design, what they stand for, and the crazy things Elon does, these other things, which I think are really good.
Any questions from the crowd? Not yet, I will. No? Okay. Let's see, where are we at here? Let's see, this is a question that we've asked at our last Founders event. So what does a perfect weekend consist for Mike Sinyard?
Perfect weekend. I would say, first of all, hot weather. I like warm weather. Hotter the better. I would say my wife was back there, Linda. We would go out to eat, go to a movie. On the weekend, I like to get up early, read a little bit, and then go for a long ride. I like those long rides that Eric was talking about, and I like those. They're really long rides. And somehow it just takes me a while to get my, when you go riding, for me the first hour or two is the worst. Later it gets better. It's funny. But to go on really long rides, and with people at work, the best is going with my son, who's really quite a strong rider. He was a pro mountain bike rider, but too big. He's like 6'5", too big to be competitive. And every time at the top of the hill, he's waiting up there, and he'll go, "Are you okay?" I said, "Would you just shut up?" So that's what I like to do, ride, great food. I love food. Who doesn't? Good espresso, good friends. Simple.
So, in that same vein, you mentioned your son's a pro, pulling you up on rides. Tell us, Tom Boonen, maybe you've heard of him, pro rider, has a question for you. Tell us about your worst experience on a ride ever.
Tom.
Tom.
Well, first of all, Tom, I'm glad you're okay after that bad crash in Abu Dhabi. Tom looked really good in the Worlds. What an amazing guy he is. Inspiration for everybody. Well, thinking about a bad ride, as long as you finish the ride, it's never bad, right? In fact, some of the best rides are the most, start off or in the middle, is the most miserable, raining and terrible. Those end up to be the most fantastic in the end. What's that?
What about the deer?
The what?
The deer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was a bad ride. I was going down a hill and this deer ran out in front of me. That was bad at top speed. Yeah, that was, thank you, Linda. That was one of the worst rides. I got hit by a deer. Oh my gosh. It just ran into it. I could smell it. It was just right there. I used to love deer. Now I think of them. Ned had told me, they're not that good. They're just like big rats with antlers. And Ned, I agree. I don't like them anymore.
That's great. Well, since we're talking about pros, since early on you've Specialized has always had a quiver of accomplished riders. What about being involved in high-level competition is important to you? Was it marketing or product development, or both?
I would say we learned so much, and
Was there, sorry to interrupt you, is there a particular product that really was really tested, truly tested on the racetrack before it was brought to the fold for the public?
well, I would say for the 28 years, Ned has been one of the very, very best testers in the world as far as tires, shoes, the frame, the wheels. A lot of riders are really, really strong, and some can really tell you the difference, and some riders, everything's good, right? Unless they don't win. But Ned has been very, very good at that in all those areas that I was talking about. And tires being really critical, a lot of testing. I was asking Ned, I say, what have you been doing this weekend? He goes, well, I'm testing a new bike. So that's key. It's really, really key. And on the road side, I would say Tom Boonen in particular had really raised our game. Because the first bikes that we put Tom out on, they weren't strong enough because he's such a strong horse. And we couldn't figure out what is it? How do we make this bike stronger? And people riding it at work, some of you guys remember that, and you go, hey, there's no problem. We took it out on the lunch ride and it's fine. But you know what? There's a different world between normal, strong people taking it out on a lunch ride and somebody like Tom Boonen. But we learned a lot, how we, kind of in the same way when Mers was working with us and knowing how to build the frame, but we really changed a lot in the change days. So we've learned a lot over the years how to make the bike better and better. And Tom Boonen was really big for that. And even some of our first cranks, when Tom would take off and just pull the chain right off. So it's real, it's real. Tires are another one, like on the Pro Tour riders, the compound is really a big deal. And it may sound arrogant, but we have one of the best compounds, and that's why a lot of the guys can really go downhill fast. And they're praying for rain, because they go, we have an advantage.
Great. Any questions from the crowd? Hey, Sean. Is that a question from the crowd there?
Could you describe your ideal burrito?
Describe the what?
An ideal burrito.
Oh, an ideal burrito. Oh boy. More vegetarian. I used to eat a lot of meat, but I would say, boy, all the good stuff, a lot of avocado, right? And all the good stuff in there. So I do love burritos. And I would say our whole family is so spoiled because my wife Linda just makes such great food at home. Like I'm into bikes, she rides too, but she's into cooking. So that's a good deal. But we try to eat really healthy, and probably more now in the last years of the awareness of that and all the stuff that we do to food, right? That doesn't happen in other parts of the world. So, but any burrito's good.
Anybody else?
Why'd you choose Morgan Hill as your headquarters?
People wonder that all the time. Especially the people that work there. You know, you know, so we were in San Jose in the beginning, actually in Campbell, and as the Silicon Valley grew, and it was harder for us to find space, so we moved to San Jose, kind of ran out of space there, plus it was really congested. So we said, hey, we're always riding it down in Morgan Hill, so let's go down there. And so that's why it was less congested, less expensive, and a great place to ride. So that's why we went down there. But people wonder that all the time.
I have another question here. This was from another event we do here similar to this, where we had Chris Chance speaking, and he had mentioned in a recent talk that he saw himself as a coach for his employees, and that was part of the reason that so many Fat Chance alumni went on to create their own successful bike businesses. How do you see yourself for your employees?
So it'd be interesting to ask what they think. I think different at different times, right? Trying to encourage when we're behind, and sometimes when maybe we feel too confident, trying to shake it up. So sometimes I try to be a disruptor, but I hope. I think what we all want to do is inspire people to do things better by working together. So our group is very collaborative. So people have to be very collaborative. And if people don't want to be collaborative, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so, you know, really encouraging the teams, encouraging the people to do things they didn't think they could do. I don't know that I'm a very good coach. I try.
Oh, we have another question here.
Hey, Mike. I wanted to ask what your perspective on aluminum was and what Specialized is looking to do in that area. Do you think, is there much innovation driving that force, or is there something about consumer demand in regards to that material?
I think aluminum is great, and we invested a lot in the last couple of years and created that one with the Smart Weld frame that is really a beautiful ride. It's a really beautiful ride. The thing is, to make it so nice, to make it like that, it's almost the cost of carbon. So most people don't, they go, no, I want a carbon bike. Just making a really beautiful steel bike like that would cost you more than a carbon bike. So we do it, not many people appreciate it.
Other questions from the crowd? No? All right.
Well, thank you. Thanks for listening to the old guy talk up here. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, before you jump off there, is there anything else you want to kind of conclude with, or maybe do you want to speak to some of the bikes that are in the area, maybe pulling out your trusty steed right there, or is there anything that you'd like to kind of conclude with?
Yeah, I think just concluding with some of the bikes, I'd say, check out this machine here that Jim had made, and look how beautiful those racks are. Hollow chromoly tubing, which is quite a feat, and you feel how strong those are. But yeah, it's always fun to look at at all the different bikes. As I say, the bikes that Jim and BB made in the early days, those bikes there, I go, those are still really great bikes. And hopefully that's the way we keep doing it. And along with, I don't know who's.
That's Sarah's World Championship bike. We just got that in yesterday.
Well, heck yeah. That bike did okay. Yeah. Well, and I think that's an example of when you ride that bike, you can feel that every little power on the pedals is just right there. And I would argue that's probably one of the best descending bikes in the world, that one. And the AWOL there, Kevin and Eric's AWOL. And Jim was saying, hey, my son needs one of those to go ride down to Brazil. So, yeah. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
So, real quick before everyone jumps up.
Just a few minutes I'd like to take of your time. There's a very dear friend of mine I'd like to tell you about. You need to know something about this guy, and he needs our help. So if you go back to 1980, I'm running a shop, and we're making custom mountain bikes, and there's really almost no builders in. This is before Steve Potts, before Ibis. I'm selling Mountain Goats and Richies and bikes from a guy named Chris Pauley. So little known stuff. They looked like this. They were all sort of double diamond frames. The chainstays were a mile long, the bikes were laid back, the brakes were horrible. You used to wear logging boots so you could come around a corner like this, dragging a foot to kind of slow down to scrub off some speed in a corner. And a good weight was anything under 35 pounds. And so one day I get a packet in the mail and it's pictures. I don't know who it's from, and I open it up and this guy says, I make these bikes, do you want to sell them? So the first bike I look, and it looks much like this, except it's obviously a welded aluminum frame. And I'm a Klein dealer at the time, which was the first welded aluminum road bike, and I thought, holy cow, we're going to get under 30 pounds now. This is pretty interesting. And I look at the next picture, and it's, again, another typical looking mountain bike, aluminum frame, but bull moose bars. And then I get to the next picture. And here I'm looking at what turns out to be the fully envisioned form of the modern mountain bike. It's aluminum, it's a radically sloping top tube, an oversized seat post, a single clamp magnesium stem. This guy's created his own brakes. You can lock the wheels up with one finger. We were riding 126 rear ends in the early days. He's got 140 custom hubs, sealed bearing bottom bracket. Everything on this bike was exactly as you would picture it today. And this guy was Charlie Cunningham, who later went on to found WTB, and he worked with us in the early days on the ground control tire and a number of other things. So I was Charlie's first dealer. And the only way I can describe him is he is a guy that was untethered by any ideas that came before, and he was a completely open mind. And he looked at the mountain bike without any conception of what it should be, and he purely looked at what needed to happen to make these bikes right. And I think if you're riding a mountain bike today, there's some elements of that bike that go directly back to Charlie. He's the guy that flipped the switch into the modern world. And so Charlie's a guy, very modest guy. He lives on his bike. He's been a macrobiotic forever. He does a lot of crazy stuff, and he drinks reverse osmosis water. So he was out on a ride a while back early in the morning, and that reverse osmosis water sucks the electrolytes out of your system, and he passed out on the bike on a downhill. When he came to, 7 broken bones and a subdural hematoma, so bruise on the brain. He went to the hospital. They sent him home, and then it started bleeding in the middle of the night. Long story short, sorry. He had emergency brain surgery, and he's in really tough shape. And we don't know if we're going to get him back. So we're passing the hat here for Charlie. He's a guy that lives incredibly modestly, and I don't know what else to say. There's a GoFundMe site on the web, and if you go look at the names of the people that have funded it, it looks like a who's who of cycling. But Charlie needs your help, and we'd appreciate it if you donate something. Thanks.
That concludes the show, guys. Thanks so much for coming out. We really appreciate you being a part of this little project that we do here. Yeah, there's some stuff to grab on the way out, so please do so. And yeah, thanks again. Really appreciate it.